I'm a new college grad thinking through my insurable needs. I don't have a spouse or kids right now, so I know life insurance isn't a priority yet. But what about disability insurance? Is that something I should be looking into at this stage of life? And if so, what kind should I consider? And when should you be considering all of these insurances is really the question.
Way ahead of the curve.
I know.
Bert, I love this question. I love that you are thinking through this, because a lot of people don't realize this, and I think this is a little bit of a hot take. Early on in your career, early on in your financial journey, I counsel young people all the time. Like, I'll be looking at their expenses and I'll be like kind of going through it with them, and I'll see this thing and it's like, $50 a month, or it's actually less than that, $20 a month, and it's like life insurance, and I'll be like, well, hey, why do you have life insurance? Like, oh, well, I just, I signed up and I was able to do this, and I had a friend who was selling, and I'm like, man, I don't know that you have a need for life insurance. No one is dependent upon your income. If something were to happen to you, there's no one who's going to be put out because you're not able to go generate that wealth. So you really don't have an insurable need on your life at this time. And so it sounds like Bert understands that and recognizes that, but a lot of young people don't. They just think, okay, I'm an adult. I've got obligations now. I'll go buy life insurance. That's not the case. It's not something that you have to have right on. But then the second question is a really interesting one. All right, so disability insurance. And for those that don't know, this is a type of insurance that if you were to become disabled and unable to, and Brian will talk more about this, perform your job or perhaps perform any job, then there is a benefit that you can receive so that you can provide for your well-being. So the question becomes, who needs disability insurance? When do you need disability insurance? How do you decide what kind of disability insurance? And what do you know about disability insurance?
I have to pick on you about your answer on that a little bit. Like, if somebody has $20 a month coming out, I'm probably not going to pick on them about that. But even though they don't have a huge, just because of down the road, they might have a medical situation, they're not as insurable. But what I see is that, because you mentioned a buddy who sold it to him, it's the whole life policies where it will be 20 times the 20. So they have a $400 a month premium. And then I'll be like, yeah, what are you doing? You have nobody. But that's basically like they just didn't get Starbucks 2 or 3 times. And so I'm just picking on you. You're spot on, but 20, I would have said $400 a month, because that could be funding your Roth IRA instead of funding a whole life policy for your college roommate that is tipping their hat towards insurance sales. Mm-hmm. We've all been there, or know somebody who's done that. But when it comes to disability, this is what Bo's talking about. First of all, your employer might very well offer disability insurance. And there's nothing wrong with looking at that. And then there's quite a few tips that I want to give on this. First of all, you always want to pay for disability with your money after tax, meaning if your employer offers a deduction through your payroll, be careful if it lowers your income taxes, because the reason I say that is because if you pay your disability insurance premiums with after-tax money, meaning that money was subjected to income taxes before you paid the premium, if you become disabled, that insurance will pay out completely tax-free. Mm-hmm. That's great. You can imagine benefit. Because a lot of times you don't have to have 100% replacement if you take out the income taxes. You might only, especially if it's tax-free, you might only need to replace 60% of your income, because you're not having to cover the income taxes, the Social Security and Medicare taxes and all the other things. So that's why be very careful how you pay for your disability insurance. The second thing is what Bo was alluding to. Is it ONOC or is it ENEOC, meaning occupation? If you're a person that is in a very specialized career, and you see this with doctors, you see this with all kind of people where you might be, if you just go by a general disability policy that's very affordable, you might be sorely disappointed to find out that as long as you can go be a greeter at the local hardware value store, that you don't qualify for disability. But you're like, well, wait a minute, my family or potential future family might need this. Then I would just pay attention to those description terms, because that will impact the premium. And look, if you're super healthy, typically you want to buy your own policy outside the employer. But I have to say, but there might be like your employer might be buying through a trade association or something like that. So it's one of those things where you kind of need to try it both ways to see disability is a little different than life insurance in that aspect, because I know I buy my disability from both of my trade organizations. I have like the AICPA as well as the NAPFA financial planning group. That's how we bought our disability, is because those trade organizations usually work with insurance companies specifically for your industry, and they give you a pretty good deal. So so if you're in a specialized industry, see if there's some type of membership benefit or industry specific policy that you might be qualifying for as well.
So for your question, Bert, is this something you should be considering? Absolutely. Is it something you should investigate? For sure. Is it likely that you have an insurable need? If you were to become disabled, you would still need to have cash flow coming in? Yeah. So I think this is often one that we see is incredibly uninsured and a lot of people avoid. And yet it's one of the ones that's probably more likely to happen. What was it? Something like 1 in, I'm going to mess this stat up, Nick, but don't correct me.
Here, before you give a stat, because we don't know the stat, is that we're all going to die, but you're more likely to become disabled while you're working age than you are to die.
That's exactly right.
That's the stat without giving the percentage.